We're out here live at H&A 2025, and we're on the show floor, and we're going to sit down with Greg from SEK Surebond. Greg and I go back in this industry probably over 10 years, and one thing I immediately respected about Greg was his industry experience and knowledge in all things hardscape accessories. And I'll let Greg explain what I mean when I say hardscape accessories.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. So hardscape accessories are everything that goes with your pavers during the construction process. So at SEK Surebond, we have a complete line of the accessories, including polysweep, polymeric sand, Surebond cleaners and sealers and adhesives, plus a whole line of edge restraints for your permeable or regular needs. We also have a new line of Trass Bedding for porcelain and thin natural stone.
So tell us a little bit about Trass Bedding and how it's working with the porcelain and why guys are switching over to that with that application.
Sure. So the biggest problem with porcelain is the hollow sound. So if you're putting your porcelain on traditional base, so dense graded with sand, or open graded base even, or there's some other products on the market that are a foam base, you're getting a hollow sound when you walk on it. And I think the expectation from the end user on the porcelain is much, much higher than a regular paver because it's porcelain. It looks like the tile in their house. So you're getting this hollow sound when you walk on it. In addition to that, because the thin natural stone and the thin porcelain they're less than an inch, you're also getting some movement with any of those three base options, which will deteriorate your polymeric sand or your hydrosweep or resin sand, whatever you're using. So when we do what's called a Trass Bedding, we're making a rigid permeable base our product is called Easy Set. And then we're going to use another wet set mortar type product that we offer called Easy Bond. So we're combining a couple of inches of Trass Bedding with a mortar set. So now we've increased the density or the thickness of the porcelain or thin natural stone. So we get rid of that hollow sound. In addition, we made a positive connection so they're not moving around. And we have a permeable system that we could use hydrosweep, our resin sand that is permeable to get a completely, truly permeable system. And as you know, a lot of municipalities are regulating how much impervious surface you can have in your landscapes. So this is a great solution to get around and within those laws and still get a successful hardscape project.
So most contractors out there may think that they have to pour a solid concrete slab to lay this porcelain on. But you're talking about the benefits of a permeable concrete, and that's what we're talking about with Trass Bedding is permeable concrete. That's really what I want to get out there to the audience. That's really the definition of Trass Bedding.
Correct. Well, a lot of guys will do porcelain or thin natural stone over a regular concrete, which is fine for the stone perspective. The problem is we don't have a lot of jointing options then. If you put a polymeric sand in there, we put it in a bathtub, so the longevity is greatly less than it would be in a permeable situation or drainable situation. If I use a resin sand, now I'm introducing moisture into your system, so you could get in freeze-thaw climates, you could get popping from the freeze-thaw. So what we're doing with the Easy Set Trass Bedding system is we're giving you the strength of that concrete. So I'm giving you 4,000 to 4,500 PSI compressive strength, but I'm also adding the permeability. So we're getting all the benefits of a rigid concrete base coupled with the benefits of a permeable system that allows us to do whatever we want to in the jointing there.
And just speaking of porcelain, this is going to be a high-end job. This is going to be a high-end client with some expectations. This thing is going to be perfect and last a long time. So I think that's, if your client suggests or requests porcelain, I think you're already dealing with, a certain type of clientele, a certain type of design expectation. So to have all this information and have the education before you go out and do this, that's why we like to partner with people like SEK Surebond, because they will get their reps right out there on site with you and go through these new application processes.
Absolutely. There's reps just like me all over the country, which will not only, sell you the product through our dealer network, but they'll also teach you how to use it. And that's really what separates us from a lot of our competition. I'm sure they're good products, but we spend a lot of time on the training, which is why we hooked up with you guys. I mean, that's your focus. It's also our focus as well.
Yep. So if you take on a new lead and your client is asking you for porcelain and you're thinking about Trass Bedding, just be sure to reach out to SEK Surebond to provide that Trass Bedding for you, to tell you where to get it, but also to provide the on-site support to make sure your project is a success. While I have you here, there's just a topic that I'm passionate about and you're passionate about. And actually, since I've been here at the show the past couple of days, I've even had some conversations in the booth. And since I am sitting down with, my opinion, the expert on polymeric sand, I just want to talk to you about that because it is the number one callback in our industry. And when I say the number one callback, guys, I mean we finish the project and we walked away from it, and the callback is when the client calls us back because something went wrong. They noticed something that wasn't right, but they may not have even paid their bill yet, or they paid their bill and they want you to come back and take care of it. So you walk away from the job and a callback brings you back to the job, which inevitably, in most cases, you're going to be losing money on that job. So let's talk about why polymeric sand is the number one callback and how we can eliminate that, Greg.
It is a big problem in the industry. And part of the problem is lack of knowledge, like we talked about, training. And there's a bunch of different varieties of sand out there, different competitors other than ours, with different installation methods. So the first thing is make sure you get trained on your product and you have the support from your rep, which you always talk about. And I know in previous conversations, we've talked about the 3 problems I see with polymeric sand. A small percentage, 2 or 3%, is actually a problem with the sand. It's a manufactured product, things can go wrong. It's absolutely out there, but it's not as big a problem as the guys tend to think it is. The contractors think it's always a sand problem, but in reality, sure, it could be, but it's a small percentage.
User error is where we're going.
Well, we're kind of heading that direction, yeah. So I would say 8 to 10% is probably site selection. We've talked in the past about HydroSweep and resin sands in the big craze that's going around with that product, but it's just a tool in your toolbox. Polymeric sands, if that's our choice for our project, they're designed to get wet and dry and wet and dry. And if I put it in a site that's wet, like a wooded site, which is a lot of your projects, or under a deck or a north side of the house, they just struggle there. They're designed to go through that cycle. When we keep them constantly wet, they get organic growth, which keeps them even more wet, and we just go down the struggle bus path right there. But the biggest reason I see in the field is that the guys are not using enough water. So it is mostly an installation error. I've seen polymeric sand go on pavers that were damp that the guys didn't know they were damp and they're getting some staining. I've seen polymeric sand, for the most part, is underwatered. And every polymeric sand has a different watering method. Some are super fast setting, some are slow setting. Our approach with our polysweep and extreme wide joint polysweep is to give you as much time as possible to saturate that joint. That is the key. At the time of installation, we have one shot to get that sand saturated for the entire depth of the joint. If I give it a little bit of water or underwater it, it just sets up on the top, and we've all seen that. You come back later, maybe months later or weeks later or years later, and the sand is peeling off like a piece of caulk. That's usually from underwatering.
I just want to stop you right there, and that's really what it is that there's different manufacturers of this sand on the market, and each one has its own wetting process or time it allows for that sand to get wet. So with SEK Surebond, we are just going to get this thing as wet as we can. I think the bag says get it wet 3 times.
3 waterings, yep.
Sometimes I get it wet 4 or 5 times, Greg, but that's okay, right?
It is, absolutely. That is the key. If we could get guys to choose the right tool, so we're going to know our site, and then install that product correctly, we do recommend the 3 waterings, but the biggest thing is we recommend to check that joint when you're done. Stick a knife or a screwdriver down in there. If it's not wet top to bottom, with polysweep, you can water it as many times.
So basically it comes down to getting that water on the joint. I think another thing would be reading the instructions on the back of the bag.
Absolutely.
But inevitably knowing the rep for the product you're working with, right? And even if you have put down polymeric sand before, or you're switching brands, you're switching from one manufacturer to another manufacturer, and you're still doing polymeric sand, you can still bring that rep out there to help to assist you through that and make sure you get it wet. So with these fast setting sands, the problem is they can't get the joint all the way through. So that's the difference really, is a fast setting sand doesn't allow you to get the joint wet all the way from top to bottom, so then guys, what happens is Mrs. Jones walks out there and the top of the polymeric sand is peeled off, the 1/4 inch popped off, and now all that sand underneath there is loose, inevitably is going to be all over the patio, but then it's not consolidated like it should be.
Correct.
Hardened like it should be.
It's not, because we've never activated those polymers. Polymers have to get wet in polymeric sand to activate, no matter what brand it is.
Yeah, right.
So the other thing that we're really proud of at SEK Surebond is our polysweep has been the same formula for 17 years since we introduced it. You know, there's some excitement around a new product every year, but we've kind of found if it works and we have our team trained to train our contractors team, then that's a recipe for success right there.
Yeah, perfect. And talking about the training and education part of this, like I said, get these guys from SEK Surebond out there on your site with you. And also on our Hardscape Mentor website, we did put together a really in-depth tutorial where we had Greg out on site and we went through all the steps of polymeric stands. You can check that out at hardscapementor.com as well. And if you're first time using Trass Bedding and you have a porcelain lead, be sure to reach out to SEK Surebond because that is a trending product right now and you want to set yourself up for success. So, Greg, thank you for joining us here at H&A 25. What's been your experience so far of the show?
It's been great. I got captured in a lot of booths yesterday, so I didn't make it all the way through. A lot of excitement in the industry. Porcelain, the Trass, all that stuff is great. There's some exciting new products in the paver manufacturers as well, so the guys should come down and check it out.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you all next time.